Hello and welcome to Logistically Speaking, the weekly podcast where we bring together some of the most interesting thought leaders in the world of logistics and supply chain management to discuss current events, insights, as well as best practices. Logistically Speaking is brought to you by Bring, the enterprise-class last-mile logistics platform. All right, everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is episode 6 of Logistically Speaking, the weekly podcast where we bring in professionals from the logistics and supply chain world to talk about current events and future, where we see logistics going in the future. This week, we have a really special guest. I'm really excited to have Joe Bobko here from Boxed. We're going to have a really great conversation of kind of the current state and future of logistics and transportation. I'm going to let Joe introduce himself, talk a little bit about Boxed, and then we'll get into the discussion. So, Joe, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Well, thank you, Mark, for the introduction. I appreciate it. For everybody that may listen, I am the Vice President of Transportation for Boxed. And for those of you that unfortunately may not have heard of Boxed yet, consider us the warehouse club on the web, except for the perishable items. So what we offer to folks all throughout the United States is the ability to order from a chair, an automobile, a desk, standing at a ball game, to either use our mobile app or their computer, order items in bulk at warehouse club prices, and get them delivered straight to the door, today using national parcel carriers, and in the future, who knows how we'll get it to you because of the way the industry is changing today. My history within the world of transportation is I began in this industry when horse and buggies were still being used to deliver product, or at least it seems that way based on the rate of change. But I started my career with UPS in the late 1970s, spent a number of years with United Parcel Service, moved over to a national courier company, then moved over to the shipper side of the table, where I was with Fresh Direct, Grainger, AmerisourceBergen, Toys R Us, had a consulting company for a couple of years, but then Boxed, who was one of my early clients, asked me to join the team, and that's where I am today. So my role at Boxed is to be responsible for everything that moves on wheels, whether it's inbound or outbound.
And Boxed is a pretty up-and-coming company, right? I mean, you guys are really killing it, and you've raised quite a bit of money, and there's a lot of buzz around it.
We are a tech company at heart. Our founders came out of the mobile gaming industry, where they had a successful company that was purchased by Zynga a number of years ago, and they had the foresight to understand that there was a way where there was a potential to take mobile commerce and bring into the world of delivering bulk groceries to the home. So at our heart, we are a tech company, but from the nuts and bolts of execution, we're delivering everything from containers of Coffee Mate to Dixie cups to cases of Gatorade and water to the home and to the office. That's been a very interesting growth piece of the business also.
Right, yeah. Especially, startups these days, they have, these fully stocked kitchens and things like that. That seems to be a very popular thing in the world of high tech, at least here in New York City. So kind of getting into it, you were talking about how you've been in this since the days of horses and buggies. So obviously a lot has changed since then. What are some of the most surprising changes you've seen in the way goods and services are transported? And, what do you think is going to be the future? What are we going to see in the next few years, the next decade, that's going to completely revolutionize the way, goods and services are delivered to the end customer?
Well, I think the easiest way to start is to provide a frame of reference. And for any of the listeners that are really familiar with package delivery rates, this will hit home. So when I started with UPS had a motto, best service, lowest rates, and a Zone 2 1-pound package was $1.12. And that was it. Today, UPS's motto has many more words than that. It is more of a statement. And a Zone 2 1-pound package today is $6.94 plus one of 1,000 different accessorials that could be added to the package. So if we stay in just a silo, looking at that, or looking at them as the bellwether of the changing industry, what it basically says is the movement of a package from point A to point B, which really isn't rocket science, has now become very complicated in that the primary carrier in the United States has made it very complicated to figure out what it's going to cost. Now, let me back off of that a little bit. To go from that in 1979, because that is when I started with UPS, to today's world, what's changed is the competition in the marketplace. And when I mean competition, I just don't mean the increased growth of FedEx or the development of FedEx ground systems from RPS in the early 90s. But it's been the influx of, or the ability of companies like DHL to offer a global mail product within the United States, for consolidators such as Logistics to offer services in the package world utilizing carriers. Logistics is not a carrier. They utilize the USPS and other carriers to support their business. So competition, or the competition for the package that's out there, has grown greatly. The ability also to take different services and tailor them to what the customer needs has also been another great change in the industry. So going back 20, 30 years, the bulk of the business that moved across the country via the parcel carriers, and we'll stay on that for a moment, was primarily business-to-business movement. With the growth of e-commerce, that now is driving double digits plus growth each year in the business-to-consumer delivery market. And today, the consumer has a choice of getting a package at their home, getting their package at their office, having the package rerouted while it's in transit, having the package delivered to a convenience store that's down the block so they can pick up that package when they go pick up their gallon of milk or their nightly newspaper. Or they have the desire or the ability to have the carrier hold it for delivery, or to have it delivered to a closet and a locker, and the customer goes and picks it up at their specific required time. So we've moved to a world where initially it was customer places an order, shipper ships it, and customer gets it based on those parameters. To today, the customer is telling the shipper when, where, and in a number of cases, how to ship that package. So I think that's been a big change.
Right. The consumer is more empowered in that relationship.
Absolutely. And over the past few years, we have that very large company named after a jungle in South America that's been able to offer many more things. And I say things not only in terms of product, but in ways the customer can get the product and how they get it through the advent of different services. It's been a very customer-focused effort, and that's forcing other people that wish to provide goods and services to the consumer to come up with at least methods that will equal the competition, and then to try to determine which ones will better the competition.
Yeah, I think that's something we're definitely seeing, and that particular jungle-related company seems to be putting a lot of pressures on some of the incumbents to innovate in a way to meet those, the new expectations that they've essentially kind of created within the consumer market.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, as we look at, today, 2 years ago, and then 2 years from now, is, today, not only are there national carriers, there are regional carriers who years ago were just called couriers, who occupied a very specific niche in the United States. But those regional carriers, or those regional parcel carriers, now, for want of a better term, are considered little UPSs or little FedExes. And then to take it one step further, as volume and density grows and as shippers have to figure out ways to get product to their customers faster, there is a multi-billion-dollar industry made up of couriers that may only service small geographical markets, or in some cases, major metropolitan markets within a state, using Texas as an example, that are becoming more and more of an integral part of a company's distribution strategy. And as they grow the business, or as they gain business, it becomes economical for shippers to use these couriers that most folks did not even understand what the relevance to distribution was several years ago because of the niche industries they serve. But now these local couriers are delivering everything from fresh recipe boxes to flower arrangements to print forms to laser toner to ping pong tables. And they're doing it in a very quick and efficient manner. And they're letting the customer drive the how, when, and how quickly it gets to them. And I think the next level, as anybody who's following what's happening in the industry today, we talk about drone delivery. Well, I'm going to have a hard time seeing a drone deliver a 50-inch TV. However, when you look at the bulk of the business-to-consumer e-commerce market, the average package has a relatively low weight. The average package has a relatively small cubic volume, and those drones can certainly handle that product from a weight, a volume, and a range standpoint. I believe the application will be huge in the commercial world first, in those areas that are expensive to service for a carrier, or in a faraway place. DHL has given some examples, or has shared some examples on how they use drones to deliver product to islands. If you think about that in the United States, well, there are a number of islands within the domestic 48 states that can be serviceable by drone. And will these drones be as big as a car someday? Of course they might be. But then talking about a drone that's as big as a car takes us into the unmanned vehicle delivery. Where we have Uber, who's purchased Otto, which has developed some self-driving systems for tractor trailers, and we already have evidence of that occurring in Europe, where there are self-driving tractor trailers, although they may be escorted by a human being in a lead tractor. We're going a long way towards improving the efficiency and the economics of moving product, and at the same time addressing labor shortage issues. There's a tremendous driver shortage in the United States for tractor trailer drivers, and over the years, this in some ways will definitely alleviate the issue. And there's also a shortage of people that want to deliver packages on a daily basis, as a primary source of income. So this technology seems to be addressing multiple elements. Only time will tell which ones it's successful at addressing. And as far as the public goes, the public acceptance, I will absolutely be concerned if I see a truck or a car coming at me and I don't see a driver behind the wheel. But I guess in time, we all get used to accepting new technology, as long as it has a benefit to us as individuals.
I mean, in terms of the drone aspect, this actually seems to come up every single guest I've ever had. The idea of drone deliveries ends up coming up in the conversation because the idea is very interesting. But as someone who lives in New York, I have a hard time seeing, New Yorkers being fully comfortable with flying drones overhead, security stuff and things like that. It just seems, it seems like that there are unforeseen barriers that are going to be in place, like that, for example, that may hold up, the full kind of scaling of that kind of technology for, deliveries.
Well, I think it's similar to the use of triple trailers in different parts of the United States. In New York City, there's a maximum length capacity for tractor trailers. In the state of Montana, you can tie 3, 40, or 45-foot trailers together to create a road train. So I think the specific geographic and population density constraints will drive where a drone works and where it doesn't work. You know, Montana, Harrisonville, Montana is a great example. Harrisonville, Montana is a small town with a small population. So it may be very appropriate for a drone or drones of some sort to service that area with certain packages and certain weights. In New York City, 767 Fifth Avenue with 600 600 offices in the building, it's not likely that a drone delivery makes sense. And I think we'll see, you know, it'll occur where it needs to. It'll occur where it's possible, and it won't occur where it doesn't make sense. I, as an individual, I'm still curious to see how that drone can ensure that it makes it to the right specific GPS location. My car still can't always find its location. So again, as a consumer, as a consumer and as an individual, my jury is still out on the potential success, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. And I think what we'll see is, you know, critical items that need to be there as soon as possible. If a drone is a better option than a car, than a truck, than a van, I think that'll be the choice. Mm-hmm. I think what you'll see drone depots throughout different towns and different cities, much like you have Tesla charging stations in multiple locations. And I don't think you'll always see a drone going back to its origin point. I see it being potentially a shared item, much like intermodal chassis are shared today by many carriers and many ocean lines.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about the way it would be deployed in that way. So it's an interesting kind of vision of the way it's going to go, because I like the idea of kind of comparing it to the Tesla charging stations, and kind of people are going to start getting used to seeing that with drones. I want to take this conversation in a kind of completely different direction, but given it's kind of timely, the holidays are coming up, so any company that does any sort of deliveries obviously is going to expect an increase in pressure on their supply chain, on their logistics, on the delivery. How, over the last few years, especially with the increase in e-commerce and things like that, how do you think that's affected the way companies can plan for the holidays, for the increase in requirements for moving product? And do you think that they've done a good job up until now, and what can they do to make it better?
There's an old saying, failure to plan is a plan to fail. As much planning that goes into the holiday season, which always starts on January 2nd for the following year, the ultimate driver of the success or failure of that season is the consumer. So all planning is always based on past history plus an expectation of growth for the following year. I think if you look at the retail sector, the Hanjin belly up that occurred not too long ago put a significant amount of pressure on a number of people that were moving product from the Far East into the United States. But I think at this point that's been fixed. I think going forward, as most companies sit and wait for Thanksgiving, to me, I think one of the indicators is Macy's opening time for Thanksgiving Day this year. Macy's has announced they will open an hour earlier than they did last year, so they'll be opening at 5 o'clock. The question is going to be, when you give the consumer, whether they're walking into a bricks and mortar store or whether they're ordering online, when you give them extra time to purchase, will you be able to change consumer behavior? Because most consumers wait out the peak season sales. So regardless of what you're selling as a retailer or an e-tailer, it's typical that, yes, you have a fair amount of people that shop early. But then what drives the rest of the season is, if you've stocked up on inventory, how quickly you're going to flow it out prior to Christmas. And here's what I like to say about that peak season. If you look at the supply chain, again, it started on January 2nd of this past year, getting ready for this peak season. It's to me, it's quite simple. If I want something from Box or Amazon or Jet or anybody else who's out there selling product, if I order something today, October 25th, and I'm supposed to get it on the 27th, and I don't get it till the 28th, chances are it's not a catastrophe. If I order something on November 28th, I don't know, and it's a Christmas present, I don't really care if I get it on the 29th or I get it on the 24th, as long as I get it by the 24th. Any retailer or e-tailer that's experiencing any gap in their sales plan this year opens up the floodgates as late as possible or as soon as they're aware, but it's usually too late in the season to successfully execute. And what I mean by that is most carriers this year have gone to their customers and have asked for volume projections and has stated in different formats, some in writing, some anecdotally, that that's the only volume they'll accept, or they'll accept a delta of X percent in either direction. Above or beyond that, there is a possibility that the existing carrier may or may not take the product and therefore disappoint a customer. Last year, there was some evidence that some carriers were holding to that. However, if we look at this year, and if we assume that every retailer did the right thing from a supply chain standpoint, and they brought in enough product to meet demand, and if they have it in the right place, then the only wild card left is, can the carrier networks support their requirements? And if on December 20th, there's an influx of 20% more than was planned, what's going to happen? I don't have the answer to that. I'm hearing that right now current projections have changed somewhat over earlier in the year projections, where the volume or the growth is expected to be 5 to 10% greater than projected. But I think the major national parcel carriers are doing what they need to do to expand capacity. UPS is testing Saturday delivery in a couple parts of the country, which gives them some additional capacity. FedEx has 5 days a week, and typically they'll go to 6 days a week during the peak season, and they may go earlier this year. So I think they're going to support it. I think they've planned for the worst. Last year was a tough year. On Black Friday, it took several days for both carriers to dig out in different parts of the country, but we also had some issues the previous year. This year, even with all the planning, depending on what the consumer's behavior is and economically, people are concerned right now about what's going to happen with the election. If people hold off on the dollars in their wallet until the end of the season, it is my opinion that we'll see the same bad press for both UPS and FedEx at the end of the season. If people feel good after the election, they might be spending earlier, and that will make it a smooth peak, not only for the people on the shipper side of the table, but also on the carrier side of the table.
It's interesting. I hadn't considered, those variables that would go into what might happen during the holiday season, when people are spending their money and the impact of the election. Those are all extremely interesting topics that we could probably fill an entire podcast on. But I think that we're out of time here. But Joe, really appreciate you coming on the show. I really, really do. I think our audience is really going to appreciate it as well. So thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.